Couple of tips here on how to get the most out of the 3 different titles in the title bursts category of titles in TitleMations. So I've added these 3 to the timeline here: fly in, fly up, and wipe. And let's play through the first one. So the text comes in and there's a little burst of stars. And then when it comes out, it leaves a little like a puff of dust in its wake, which are also stars. And couple things about this. First of all, you can reposition it anywhere just by dragging on it, and you can change the text just by clicking here and typing. Balloon Festival, escape, and drag it where I want. And then in the title inspector, you can do pretty much everything. You can go to the text inspector if you want to do some stuff with the text, but the main parameters are published for you here as well. So you can enter the text in this box instead if you want. By the way, this is expandable. Change the font and the size, the tracking, the color, all right here. I'll leave it as white. The burst object is this star by default. I'm going to step forward with the right arrow just so we can see it animates in, and we've got these stars, but we can choose different objects like circles, triangles, or little plus signs. And then for any object that you choose, you can choose how big they are, make them smaller, and how many there are, and the color. You can also choose for the number of ones that go out, the same thing. So when this leaves right here, we can choose the number that are going out and their color as well. We've got a couple of other options. So we can change the speed on how this flies in. Decelerate, I think, looks the best, but you can try these other options and see if you like them. The on direction is backwards, but we could go forwards. And then it looks a little bit different because the letters don't crush into each other in the same way, but still looks good. I'll go back to backwards. I think those are the 2 that work the best. You can choose how much spread they have. So by default, it's 12. But if, for instance, if you put that down at just 1, the animation will look quite a bit different with each letter coming in before the next one does. I like a little bit more spread in there, but just to taste. The off ending position you usually shouldn't have to do anything with. It just, if it doesn't get all the way off the screen, you can adjust it there. But it should get off the screen even in 4K projects. But if it doesn't, you can fix it there. And then the off, all these other off parameters are exactly the same. So pretty straightforward. The next one's also very similar. It flies up instead of over and leaves a burst of these particles. And then a box draws around it, and then it drops out. The box is optional, so I'll change this to fly high, and I can choose the box color or whether I want to even see it or not. So you can change the box color and decide if you want to show it or not, and then change the burst object just like before. And the rest of the options are pretty similar to what we had before. There's some speed randomness for the particles so that those particles will spread out more. If I stop to where those particles are right now, and let's give them a different color as well. If I increase that speed randomness, they'll spread out more. And if I increase the speed, they'll spread out more. And we can also do the scale randomness to make them have different sizes. So just a few different options for what that little burst looks like. Finally, wipe is a really fun one. It both wipes the text on and it comes off again with a nice little burst. You can't choose the elements that burst out here. It's a line that has a very specific look to it. But what you can do in the inspector here is make all the text changes, text, font, size, and tracking. Of course, color, the padding we've talked about in other titles on how wide and how tall this box is around the text, the color, and the color of this burst. So if you want that burst to have a different color, you can change that here. Pretty self-explanatory. The number is the number of these little lines. You can add a bunch more or have fewer that come on. And you can change their scale in both X and Y. For example, If you change them in Y, they'll get much longer, and if you change them in X, they'll get thicker. So you can make a very different look if they're very thick but not very long, versus the opposite. So just some parameters to play with and enjoy. So hopefully that will help you get the most out of these title bursts in TitleMations.